Today I'll be taking a look at the Amazon exclusive Alpha Flight Marvel Legends set. Now across the years, of course, Alpha Flight has been made up of many different members, as well as having lots of different artistic takes on their costumes and their appearances. But for many people, the core group is essentially seen as being made up of these characters here, because these are the ones where the book was launched under John Byrne in the 80s. Now I have to say, personally, I actually haven't read that many Alpha Flight comics. In fact, I'm mainly aware of them through their association with the X-Men and Wolverine, where they would often make an appearance or a guest star across stories. And of course, their first appearance was made in the pages of X-Men to introduce some backstory for Wolverine, because he was originally part of the team. Now, one of the key members of the team is Sasquatch. He's sadly missing from this set. He has been produced before in the Marvel Legends range, both under Toy Biz in the Apocalypse series, and later Hasbro would do their own Build-A-Figure version. So there are a couple of ways for you to complete your lineup. So starting by looking at the actual packaging itself, there's original artwork on the front cover here, which I think is really nice. It's colourful and bright, and yeah, it looks really good. And on the back there we have a nice photo shot of all the figures together, and they've been put in artistic pose with the snow mountains. I think that looks great. And again, on the side panel we have some of that artwork. It does have one of those wonderful gatefold flaps, so we can actually see the figures inside, and there's some bios next to them as well. So these are a colourful bunch of characters, and they make a really nice set. And as much as I don't like exclusive sets, I am pleased that they made this available through Amazon, which made it a bit more accessible than other exclusives have been. Snowbird, I think, is one of the most striking visually of the figures. The paint apps are really nice. There's a sort of metallic blue wash, which works really well. Her cape is a soft plastic, so it's malleable and doesn't hinder articulation, which is fantastic. I think there's a lack of paint apps in the hair, which would have been nice to have just a bit more detail in there, but overall a very nice visually appealing figure. Now in terms of the articulation, her head does spin from side to side. It can't really go up, but it does look down. It is hindered by the hair piece, which is quite solid plastic. Just have the ball jointed shoulder, which is great, and that does obviously swivel all the way there. Now, one of the major problems with this figure is the elbow joint. It's very delicate, as can often be the case with some of the female characters. Their joints are thinner, and their plastic it really feels like it's going to break off here when I try to push it. As you can see, I feel like if I was to push that anymore, I would either snap the peg or just do some damage there. That I don't want that to happen, so I'm not going to push it. But it does, you feel a lot of resistance there, and it does feel quite brittle. She does, of course, have the ball jointed hip joints. She's got the leg swivel, and she does have double jointed knees, which is fantastic. So great range of motion in the legs there. She also has the ankle pivot, and obviously can get the full range of motion in there as well, which is great. Now in terms of torso articulation, she does only have the ball joint in the chest there, which we've seen on a lot of Marvel Legends from Hasbro recently. Unfortunately, she does seem very limited in how far she can actually move forward there. So moving along to Aurora and North Star, the first thing you'll notice here is that the white parts of their costumes are actually made of that sort of pearlescence plastic, which you either love it or hate it. I'm not a big fan because it tends to make me worry that it's going to break because it feels extra brittle. But in terms of the body molds, they look fantastic. Obviously they're reusing some very familiar molds at this point, but they work really well for these characters. I think the head sculpts are particularly nice, and the articulation is pretty much what you'd expect. Aurora's head is limited in terms of the movement because of her hairpiece, which again is that solid plastic, but she does have the same body mold we've seen with Snowbird just before. She's got the ball jointed shoulders, and she has the exact same problem with the elbow joint right there. Again, I don't really want to force it. I'm getting a lot of resistance from it, and I just don't want to chance it. In terms of the wrists, they do move 360 degrees, and they bend from side to side with no problem whatsoever on that hinge. So it is really just the elbow you've got to look out for. Likewise, when it comes to the legs, again, it's got they push all the way forwards, a little bit backwards, has the double jointed knees, which is great, and the ankle pivot. North Star manages to fare a little bit better though. He has some extra articulation, and there's absolutely no hindrance to him spinning his head around, which is fantastic, and he can get a good range of motion looking up and looking down. Again, he has the ball jointed shoulders, so he can get his arms all the way up there, which is great. He's got the bicep swivel, which is cool, and he's got the double jointed elbows. Fantastic. Obviously, his wrists swivel 360 degrees, and of course they're hinged, so they can bend backwards and forwards, which is always welcome. But crucially, he has some extra articulation in the shoulder on a bit of a hinge joint there, so he can actually get a more dynamic range of poses from his arms. They can go all the way back there, which is fantastic. I really like this joint, it's excellent. He can swivel 360 degrees at the waist, which is great, and of course when it comes to the ab crunch, it has a really good distance back, and it can bend really far forwards as well. His legs, of course, have the same ball-jointed hips, so they can get a good distance forwards and to the sides. He's got the thigh swivel and the double-jointed knees. Likewise, he's got the ankle pivot there, and of course the usual range of motion. And he feels solid. He doesn't feel like he's going to snap or break or give you any grief. Shaymin is probably my favourite of the characters of the set. I really like this figure. It's a really solid, well-made figure. He's nice and colourful, and it's a great mould. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. He has really good head articulation. Despite having the hairpiece, it is a soft plastic, so there's absolutely no hindrance there to him getting a full 360-degree spin, which is great. And he's got a good range of motion, bending forwards and backwards as well. Again, it's the same body mold we've seen before, although I've noticed with mine, the ball jointed there doesn't really want to go up any further. So that's something to watch out for. A lot of resistance from that. He does have the double jointed elbow, but again, there's something, the plastic seems too soft and it just doesn't really want to work with me. The wrist swivels 360 degrees, there's no resistance there, and yeah, hinges perfectly. He does have the same ab crunch as North Star, and that's obviously really nicely done and looks really great. And of course he does have that same swivel as well. Again, it's the same legs really as North Star, so he's got that same range of motion there, and the double jointed knees, which is great, as well as the thigh swivel. But he does also have the calf swivel, which is great, as well as the ankle pivot and the usual articulation that we see in the feet. Vindicator has a very vibrant, dark, deep red, mixed in with the pearlescent white. This gives her a feel as if she might be brittle or a bit vulnerable to snapping or breaking, but she seems pretty solid. Now the headpiece looks a little bit strange on this neck to me. It looks like it's kind of sticking out, but she can spin it 360 degrees. The hair is a soft plastic. It doesn't hinder the articulation. It moves with the figure, which is great. And she's got a good range of motion, but it looks a little bit off when you look at it from the side. It doesn't look right. I think, again, the neck is maybe too long, so it looks a bit strange and a bit bulbous, especially with those eyes. She has the same chest articulation that Snowbird does, but she gets a lot more range of motion there. I'm not sure why that is, but it works much better on this figure. She has the same ball-jointed shoulders as Aurora and Snowbird, which spin round perfectly well. She has a single jointed elbow, again what we've seen before. That spins nice, and there's no issues with this one. This one bends the full 90 degrees with no resistance, really smooth. So it feels like a much stronger figure despite feeling more brittle. It's an odd thing to explain. But again, the wrist obviously articulates perfectly as well and looks fantastic. She does, of course, have the thigh swivel and the same hip ball joints that we've seen in the other figures, which does give her a good range of motion. The only thing is, again, the colouring you can see the gaps in the figure. It really shows that up. Likewise with the double jointed knees there, you can see the white pegs coming through, which might be off-putting for some collectors. And of course she has the ankle pivot there with the full dynamic range of motion in the feet, so that looks really good. Finally, we have Puck. Now, Puck has been released before, believe it or not, as a builder figure. Originally released as a doomed wave of a Wolverine series, two of these figures would not actually be produced in the end, the Rogue and the Phoenix 5 Cyclops. And releasing Puck as the Bath was a little bit cheeky, but it is actually quite a nice figure and actually has more articulation than you think. The sculpting is really nicely done, especially for a figure of this size. It's actually got quite a lot of detail in there and a lot of textures, which is great. He does have great articulation when it comes to the head. It goes 360 degrees and can actually look up quite a good distance and not too far down as well, which is which is good. And again, he has the ball jointed shoulders, which swivel around, and he's got the single jointed elbow there as well. So again, he can bend his arms the full 90 degrees, which look great. And he has articulation to the wrists as well, which do spin round 360 degrees. They don't hinge, so they don't bend forwards or backwards, but that's fine. He can move his legs a little bit forwards, he can't move them backwards at all, and he does have this single jointed knees there, so there's some potential when it comes to articulation. He does have the ankle pivots to the feet as well, which is good. Overall, there's not a great many positions you can get him into, but I think that's okay, and I do appreciate the effort to give him some articulation. And I'm glad that he's been included here, because it gives collectors a chance to actually get their hands on this character, because he was quite difficult to get hold of as the Build-A-Figure, because that wave was very tricky to get back in the day. So this is how the team looks when we throw in the Guardian that was released a few years ago in the main Marvel Legends range. As you can see, I was actually surprised that the colouring is so different to the Guardian. He's very vibrant red versus the darker red of the Vindicator. That might be comic accurate, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but I do wish they were uniform. I was kind of hoping they would be. And I also thought I'd throw in my Toy Biz Face Off Wolverine, which is his first appearance look, just to see how he looks in the full lineup. And yeah, I think he complements him quite nicely, actually, and I think this is a really cool look. So overall, this is a fun set. Now, I think there's been a few corners cut. There's some frustrations there when it comes to some of the joints, particularly on some of those female characters there. That it lends a sort of cheap quality to them, or there's a sense of they've maybe been rushed out and haven't been given the love and care that they might have been if they'd been released in a single cart wave. Now, when I've seen this set, it does have quite a high price point. I probably wouldn't recommend paying the full price for it. I think if you can get it cheaper, then I think they're a fun crew to get and a nice addition to the collection. But I think if you're going to commit to paying the full price, then you probably need to be a die-hard fan or collector, really. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as I'll be posting a lot more videos soon.